Hello and welcome to a Vegan FTA exclusive interview. I'm your host, Gareth and
I'm Jackie Norman.
Today we have the wonderful and Honourable Emma Hurst, MP for the Animal Justice Party in Australia, as well as Anita Krajnc, Executive Director of Animal Save and co-founder of the exciting new plant-based treaty, which will be the subject of our talk today.
It's great to see you both. And Vegan FTA, as you know, we are proud endorsers of the plant-based treaty. And before we dive into this initiative a bit deeper, for any of our viewers who have yet to hear about it, I don't know where you've been because it's been everywhere, but Anita, would you mind please sharing with us what exactly is the plant-based treaty?
The plant-based treaty is a grassroots initiative to create bottom-up pressure for national governments to negotiate a global plant-based treaty. So it's modeled on the popular fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. And we want to accompany the Paris Accords with practical solutions on cutting greenhouse gases. It has three main demands. The first one is relinquish, so no new deforestation for animal agriculture, no new animal farms, no new slaughterhouses. The second one is redirect. And what we're calling for is a redirection of subsidies from animal agriculture to plant-based food systems, as well as other policy tools, such as public information campaigns, taxes, and so forth. And then the third R is restore. Restore the planet, heal the planet with the reforestation of lands and also rewilding of ecosystems.
Wow, it's such an exciting initiative, and we can't wait to delve into it more. It's just, I'm stoked to have you on here to talk about it. But Animal Save is well known as one of the powerhouses of animal rights campaigning, and it's mainly known for its vigils and protests. But what is it that's encouraged you to start pursuing it in a more legislative approach as opposed to those mainstays of sort of protests?
I think that we have a responsibility to engage in individual diet change as well as policy change or system change, and we have to do both. With the Animal Save vigils, a lot of the focus was on getting individuals to come to vigils and bear witness firsthand of frightened animals that are about to go to slaughter, and it's had a transformative effect on many individuals. And we've been doing it for 10 years. But we face a climate emergency. And I think there's a recognition of that now because people are beginning to feel the impacts all over the world. And the idea of switching to plant-based food has more traction than ever. And so I think it's just a great opportunity right now to focus on system change. And if we get that kind of policy change, we can get to where we want to go faster.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? There's no ignoring it, let's face it. And Emma, as the first member of parliament in Australia to endorse the plant-based treaty, I was so excited to read that. I was like, yes, go you. What was it that got you on board? How does this initiative resonate with you?
Well, we've got a really big climate emergency. We're really at a point now, and I think that there's global recognition that we're really at a do or die stage within this climate emergency. If we really want to save the planet, we want to save the human race, the animals, everything that we live for, we need a solution. And there are a lot of token gestures going out there. There's a lot of small changes that countries around the world are doing, but it's just not enough. If we're going to really tackle the climate emergency, we need a big solution. And that's what the plant-based treaty does. It provides the big solution that will genuinely save the planet. And it's time for the plant-based treaty. It's time for us to have these conversations about this big solution that we need. It needs to be on the table because if we're just going to be looking at reducing some emissions here or there, it's just not going to go far enough. And we're just going to see more and more devastation. Here in Australia, we've all been lost in coronavirus, but we can't forget that wasn't that long ago that our entire country was on fire and we couldn't put it out. Climate change is right in front of us in so many ways, with drought, with fire, and we need to be working on this. And I think that the plant-based treaty is the closest thing I've seen to a genuine solution where it will actually create the biggest change that we need to actually ensure the survival of the entire planet.
Aye, that's so true.
Couldn't agree. Chloe Swarbrick in New Zealand. I'm gonna show you this video. You need to be watching this video and listening.
Well, that segues brilliantly into my next question. And with this initiative being built upon 3 demands, it's the first 2 in particular we'd love to sort of delve into in this sort of talk. And with the first one is to relinquish the use of land for animal agriculture, including deforestation, and stopping the problem from increasing. So a common thing we see amongst the animal rights community is that there's this message of we got to end animal agriculture now. While I'm sure all of us would love for it just to stop over 24 hours, sadly, it doesn't seem realistic logistically for that just to finish, like as much as we would love that. And so with what Plant-Based Treaty is doing, I feel, Anita, like this is your guys' way of sort of bringing forward a more realistic approach of tackling this issue by stopping the expansion first. Would you say that, yeah, this is your way to tackle it real?
That's a really good way to see it. But I think the science tells us that, we should have made these changes yesterday, decades ago. And the longer we wait, the less room we have to maneuver, and we make it harder down the road to make changes. So I think like what we tried to do with the Plant-Based Treaty is to make it science-based as much as possible. That's why, as Emma has said, it's very ambitious. It's a very big picture sort of solution to this problem. And the 3 principles are not in order of priority. They're just, don't make the problem worse, come up with solutions, and then reforest the earth. So it's just, they're all like equally important. And what the science says, according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which came out with a report in August of 2021, that they said that we have 5 years at best to make major changes. And if we, and also that we're on the road that we're currently on, we're going to get to the 1.5 degrees Celsius warming 10 years earlier by the early 2030s. And I think if anything, the science is getting worse every day. And so the treaty is just, it's a science-based treaty, and it's just saying these are the things that we need to do. We face a methane emergency. A lot of the focus previously has been on carbon dioxide, but all 3 major gases, carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, are accelerating. And if we don't address methane in particular, we're very likely to cross some tipping points. Methane is much more potent than carbon dioxide. It's about 80 times more potent, and it has a shorter lifespan in the atmosphere. So if we address it and get it to 0 as fast as possible, we're less likely to cross tipping points. So, to answer your question, the science tells us that we need to do, it's not a time for half measures. It's a time for major radical changes, and that we need to quickly phase out animal agriculture and fossil fuels. And so, we're sounding the alarm bells.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've been learning a little lately about what some of the industry, the animal ag industry over here is doing to try and reduce the problem in New Zealand. And it's like, oh, we're trialing kombucha for cows. We're trialing breeding lower methane sheep, all of these. And it's like kombucha for cows, trialing, or, taking action and doing something really worthwhile and on a far more bigger, more impactful scale. Like, it's a no-brainer.
It would seem the industries are investing as much as they can into trying to fix the broken system, as opposed to just realizing that if you just take them off the paddock in the first place, you don't have to try and make them kombucha. Well, cow butcher, I think they call it.
Cow butcher, yeah. There's been all sorts going on over here, and we're right with you, Emma. I mean, it's dreadful in Australia. We're in absolute crisis is dreadful over here as well. I think we're actually worse than the US. I was reading Australia and New Zealand when it comes to what we're doing for the climate. And Emma, having been having been a spectator myself to parliamentary hearings, it would seem to me that animal agriculture is always on the agenda in some shape or form. And from the hearings that I've listened to, the animal ag industry is always asking for more money, more exemptions, or more support to keep their industry afloat. You know, I couldn't believe it. It's very similar in Australia to what we get here in New Zealand. And it would seem that continued expansion is the industry's answer to diminishing resources and lack of sustainability. It makes no sense. Having conducted an inquiry yourself into the sustainability of the dairy industry in New South Wales and actively advocated against the expansion of these sunset industries, how true is this perception that we have of animal agriculture in the legislative agenda? And what sort of an effect might this kind of bill have in Parliament halls?
Yeah, look, I mean, this would be enormous. And, you know, I mean, apart from the fact that stopping expansion would obviously save all those animals' lives and stop that animal cruelty and also stop further deforestation and environmental destruction, but it actually also just makes logical sense. You know, we're seeing people already switching their diets to plant-based diets. It's growing in popularity. Here in Australia, we're the third fastest vegan growing market in the world. And it's booming everywhere. And as you talked about, you know, we had that dairy inquiry, and the dairy industry actually initiated that inquiry. They wanted the inquiry. And what they're asking for is more subsidies to prop up their industry. But they were also asking for other ways to build back their industry because consumers are moving away from it. So not only are they asking for more money to keep going, but they were also looking for ways that they could expand it. So they were requesting, for example, that dairy be put back into primary schools, of course, to market dairy products to children at a young age, to normalise it and make it part of their daily diet, because they could see that consumers are shifting away from it. So it makes no logical sense to continue to expand these industries when people have already turned their back on them. That's already started, and no matter what the industry does at this point, I'm of the opinion that they're actually too late now, that shift has already started and it's going to continue to grow. I mean, you only need to look at all the fast food outlets, for example, that now have vegan options, and they're growing more and more. I mean, it's too late to stop that train. That's already started. That's already going. And you look at the plant-based milk aisle. I mean, it's half of an entire supermarket aisle of all the different alternatives that are available. You know, you've got soy milk, but you've also got oat milk and macadamia milk and all these other amazing milks that are so much more environmentally friendly. So, you know, it's just logical. And I think we're going that way anyway. But, you know, having that in the plant-based treaty to stop the expansion really highlights why we need to do that. And so it's a really important step.
Yeah,
love it.
It really speaks when they have to try and get them to up the demand for it as well, not just the supply. So yeah, long may it suffer. But we love the second demand, which strives for an active transition away from the promotion of animal-based food systems to promote plant-based food and those systems instead. You know, finally getting that shift away, and yeah, hopefully into more schools, more hospitals, having that plant-based food. From my recent stay in a hospital, I can tell you we really need it out here. Toast and Marmite is great.
The toast and salad. Toast and salad. We got in a capital city hospital.
Yeah. But yeah, it's great that now you've got that second, well, as you say, it's not necessarily the second step, but another key element to the plant-based treaty there. And our organization is Vegan FTA, vegan for the animals. And so all the work that we do is with the animals in mind. Everything that we endorse is all for the animals. With the name of the treaty being plant-based, and also the second demand focusing a lot more on environmental issues, and generally there is a huge environmental sense around it, some people might be under the impression that it's more of an initiative for environmentalists as opposed to animal rights advocates like ourselves. While transition away from animal-based systems, though, is clearly a win for the animals, how important is it that our animal advocates are also engaging in this climate discussion as well, Anita?
I think that animal rights people, I think they're increasingly interested in the climate. I mean, it's impacting people's lives, like in all over the world. You know, it impacts wildlife. It impacts, your dogs when you're walking your dogs on a hot day. So I think, when you talk about the climate crisis, it presents an existential threat. And it's wildlife that suffers so much, as with billions of animals dying in forest fires. It's farmed animals that suffer, your companion animals. So I think there's the realization among many animal rights people that they need to stand in solidarity with environmentalists and climate justice advocates. So I think it's a really positive change. And I think there needs to be a lot of learning about this issue, so that because there's more openness to the plant-based solutions, I think animal rights people need to take the lead in along with others that are in showing how essential this part of the solution is. So, a couple of our endorsers are IPCC, or Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, scientific reviewers, Dr. Danny Harvey and Dr. Peter Carter. And what they say is that we can't get to the goal set in the Paris Accords without addressing animal agriculture. The latest IPCC report, the 6th assessment report, says that 35% of the greenhouse gas emissions are coming from the food system. And a majority of those emissions are coming from meat, dairy, and eggs, even though they provide a small portion of the calories. So there is no question that, we're not, it's a necessary part of the solution to address the climate crisis. And again, coming back to the 3 main greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, you look at methane, more than a third of those emissions are coming from animal agriculture, and there's an emergency. And if we don't deal with it, we're going to cross tipping points or points of no return. So yeah, I think it's an opportunity for animal rights people to, educate themselves on these issues and join a big, a larger coalition of groups where we all work together. And we have more power when we are working together with environmentalists, climate justice advocates, health advocates, human rights activists, as it should be. Like, we should all be working together, on resolving the climate, ocean, animal, and biodiversity crises.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
like you say, yeah.
Actually, speaking to some previous advocates on our interview series as well, a great way to get people to join veganism as well is to go to some of the other climate protests with them, get them excited about protests, and then you reel them in. Well, that's a don't use a fishing metaphor. No, don't use that one. But you get them on board that way. So
yeah, exactly. And we sort of say many times when we're walking along the beach and doing our beach cleanups and things like that, yes, we've still got to fight for the animals, but if we don't all embrace it and step up and address this bigger issue here, we're not going to have animals, we're not going to have humans. We just got to work together, as you say. And Emma, as someone that we see advocating for the animals consistently as well, you're such a strong voice for the animals. You've only got to follow Emma Hurst on social media. It's incredible. Her posts are, they're so inspiring, and you're working so hard on behalf of the animals. What's your stance on this as well? Do you have anything to add to what Anita's saying?
Look, I would echo everything that Anita said, particularly about that recognition that, if we don't, animals are in the environment. And so, the two are so interlinked. And so actually environmental protection is animal protection. But before I was a psychologist, before I was a politician, I was a psychologist. And so we've also got to remember that people absorb different messages in different ways. And I believe that we should be putting all the messages out there about animal protection, about health benefits, and about the environment as well, because some people will be receptive to different messages. And of course, when we're talking about things like the environment, it's actually often a much easier message for people to absorb. And if they switch to a plant-based diet for environmental reasons, for example, then the blinkers actually come off when you start to talk to them about animal protection, because they no longer see themselves as part of that problem. They see themselves as part of the solution. I know so many people that switch to a plant-based vegan diet for health reasons or for environmental reasons. And then when you approach them with the animal protection message, they're so much more open to it, because instead of having this, instead of shutting down and not wanting to listen to that message, because they sort of don't see that as being their fault anymore, they are much more open to it. And then if people are vegan then for a variety of different reasons, they're more likely to stick it out as well. So once they become a vegan for all three reasons, then they're more likely to be a vegan for their entire lives as well. So that's one of the reasons why it's important to address all of the issues that are associated.
Very true, very true. Here we're lucky to live by the beach, and I think one of the things that upsets me the most at the moment, with everything that is going on and all that knowledge that is out there and the urgency is out there, there are so many people out there at the moment. We're in lockdown as well, so you're not even supposed to be out there, but there are people on the beach teaching their kids how to catch fish. And I'm like, you should be teaching them to do the opposite. And, you're not silly. You know what's going on. But people always think one person can't make a difference. But fortunately, we've got wonderful, incredible youth activists around the world. We've got the Genesises, we've got the Gretas, and so many more. We're so fortunate to have, some great people to speak up for our youth around the world. And they're talking about those key issues that are condemning their future. And with environmentalism being a focal point for many, it seems, like you say, a more commonly accepted discussion point as opposed to animal ethics. Emma, do you believe that these voices are being heard? And is the use of the plant-based message an effective way to get in front of the more major decision makers?
Look, definitely the young people are being heard. I mean, you mentioned Greta Thunberg. You just need to look at how much of a change and effect that she has had. And there's certainly change makers that are listening to these groups because they're so passionate, because it's their future that we're taking away. So for them, it's real. And, I've seen young people, petitioning here and protesting here, literally in tears, because they're terrified. They're very frightened of the world that we're going to leave them with if we don't make major changes. And so good decision makers are listening to them, but they haven't had the full message brought to them. And that's why it's so important to bring in that plant-based message, because if the message is just save the environment without that real specifics of how do we actually do this, we end up with some of these token gestures, like you mentioned, the cow butcher. And, here in Australia, they're talking about feeding cows seaweed. Like, it's just, it's not going to fix it. It's putting a tick next to things and pretending that this is what will fix it, and it's not going to go far enough. And so that's why something like the plant-based treaty, with young activists actually taking this message and actually taking that to the change makers and saying, actually, this is what we need to be able to do to actually save the planet and to save the world for ourselves and also their children as well. And so, it's almost like we need these youth activists to step it up and to actually make sure that the change makers are hearing that very real solution.
Yeah. We briefly mentioned before as well about Genesis, and I was wondering, Anita, if you wanted to speak any more about how youth activism has become such a part of the plant-based treaty.
I think it's hard for policymakers to ignore youth activists. I think on our plant-based treaty website, we have almost a dozen youth ambassadors, and including, as you mentioned, Genesis Butler. We have Greta from Australia, and we have Nika from Toronto, and activists all over the world. And I think, if you look at the Animal Safe movement, we've recently opened 3 other branches besides the Animal Safe movement. We have Climate Safe, Health Safe, and Youth Climate Safe. And Youth Climate Safe is the fastest growing branch. It has over 80 chapters in more than 20 countries. And the youth are so concerned, like they're facing climate anxiety, and the best antidote to that is activism. And the plant-based treaty provides lots of different ways to get involved. On the one hand, we're asking people to endorse as individuals, groups, businesses, and cities. And then it also has a bunch of guides site for what every actor can do. So it has 18 things you can do at school, 14 things businesses can do. It has a way of measuring your carbon footprint. There are also political guides on how to write a letter to your politician, how to lobby politicians. There's a draft resolution that cities can use to endorse the treaty. So there are so many tools. And we're also opened a number of social media accounts. So we have a TikTok, and we have a plant-based treaty dance, which the youth love. And we have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So we're using social media in a large way. We also have global days of action, and so youth can participate in that way. So we had a soft launch August 31st in almost 100 cities. We're going to be very active around COP26, which is November 1 to 12 this year, and we're going to have global days of actions around that, as well as many actions in Glasgow, where the COP26 negotiations are taking place.
Oh, fantastic. This is one of the things that we just love about the treaty, is that how you provide all these resources, you have all the backing. It's the counter narrative to these all these sort of fake actions that the government are sort of taking with many things like the cow butcher thing. This isn't just a front for something. You've got the full depth of everything. This is how we can sort this problem out. And it's so fantastic to see you also nurturing those seeds within the young activists to really let them blossom and become empathetic and compassionate beings. And
very empowering as well. It shows us something that everybody can do, every single one of us, not just people in a lab.
And you brought up about endorsing it, and I really encourage every one of our viewers and followers to get out there and get on the website. It is big and it is bold and it is easy to do, and so how important is it that we get everyone we can to get on the website there and endorse this project, Anita?
That's one of the biggest projects we have. So for the plant-based treaty, we have these ambitious goals of getting 10 million individuals to endorse by 2023, 10,000 groups, 10,000 businesses, and 50 cities. The reason we're choosing 2023 is because the Paris Climate Accords have a stock taking at that point, where they look at what their goals are and how they're going to get there. So that's a very important year. And then we're going to reset our targets in 2023. But to get 10 million individuals, we need all hands on deck. We need to get people to endorse in all the different countries. There are lots of endorsements in Australia and New Zealand, so we're grateful for that. And we appreciate the help that you've provided, and Emma, and that's fantastic. And so we got to keep on trying to get endorsements. It takes a minute, to fill out a form. It asks you for your name, your contact. It asks what diet you're on. And depending on your answer, you get a tailored message. And when you endorse, you get an email with a lot of further actions that you can take. And on the website, there's a place where you can set your own goals. So there's a campaign hub, and you can set your own goals on how many individuals you can get to endorse and how many business and groups you can approach, and whether you want to help with lobbying your city to endorse. We had many politicians to endorse, as you mentioned. Emma was the first politician MP in Australia to endorse, and since then, your colleagues at the Young Justice Party have endorsed, which is wonderful. So yeah, I think the idea is the reason we need so many endorsements of individuals as well as groups, businesses, and cities is to create this bottom-up pressure on national governments to negotiate a global treaty. So historically, that has happened in other global treaties. If you look at the problem of ozone depletion, it was cities like Boston and then the state of Massachusetts, and then the national US government that met with other countries and then negotiated, the Vienna Convention and then the Montreal Protocol to ban CFCs. And it worked. And there are other historical examples of that. So, often national leaders don't lead. They often need public pressure. And so that's why, we're trying to generate as much grassroots pressure as possible. And so if you could please endorse the treaty, you just go to the website plantbasedtreaty.org and ask your friends and family, and and share. Like, we provide all these different ways of sharing. Like, you can put it on your Facebook profile. You could you can get stickers, download posters, banners. There's lots of material on our website.
Wow.
Absolutely, and it all looks great. And yes, I mean, Vegan FTA, we've endorsed as an organization, but also we've both endorsed as individuals as well. And that's the joy of what you can do, really spreading that word, getting your workplace on board, and getting in touch with your MPs. And Emma, as an MP yourself, for any of our audience members wanting to contact their local MPs or governors, like Chloe Swarbrick of the Green Party in New Zealand, in regards to getting on board and endorsing this treaty, do you have any advice for effectively contacting politicians? Are there any do's or don'ts that you can recommend?
Look, I would recommend sending an email first up and having in the subject line meeting request. Don't be afraid to keep following them up. If you don't get a response, call the office, send them follow-up emails. And then the most important thing, it sounds really, really obvious, but have an ask when you go in there. Make sure you know what your ask is going to be, and have a follow-up ask as well if they try to sort of turn your first ask down. So, and make sure you actually ask it. I can't tell you how many people come into my office, they present an issue, they present a solution, they talk about it, and then they walk out. And I can tell you, I mean, that is a politician's dream, that you haven't actually asked them to do anything. So you've got to make sure that you get to that ask stage and say, will you endorse this plant-based treaty? And if they say, oh, look, I've got to think about it or something, then you can sort of have a backup ask as well. If you decide not to, would you at least do X, Y, Z? Or, would you consider this? And also make sure you have a follow-up as well, so that when you leave the meeting, send them an email, thank them for their time, say that it was wonderful to meet you, but also have a follow-up so that you can also add into that email, I'll come back to you in 2 weeks to follow up with more information, or I'll come back to find out, if you had any further questions about the treaty, so that you've continued that relationship. And don't be afraid to be a little bit pushy. You're approaching really busy people. They're not always necessarily just ignoring you. Quite often, we get so many emails. So it is really, the squeaky wheel sometimes. The people that continue to contact and continue to reach out to you are more likely to sort of get that message louder to that person. So, don't be put off, and also don't worry about being a little bit extra pushy than you probably feel comfortable with. That's the sort of people that you're dealing with. So I strongly encourage you to just keep pushing.
Oh, thank you.
That's awesome advice. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, all of our viewers, you know what to do now. I can't thank you, Anita, enough for you and your team bringing this initiative to the fore. It's fantastic. We can't thank you enough, and thank you to both of you for being here talking to us about it today. It's just been so lovely and getting your insights on it. Was there anything else you'd like to add, Anita?
I think we're facing a climate emergency, and I think that according to Dr. Peter Carter, who's an IPCC scientific reviewer, he said the science is getting worse every day. So I recommend that you just learn more about the issue. And I think the most important thing is that we act on the science. And he was interviewed by the founder of Extinction Rebellion on their website. And I'd recommend that you follow him on Twitter as well. On our Twitter account, we try to publish a lot of the news. The Guardian is an incredible paper with respect to reporting on the climate crisis. So I just think it's our responsibility as adults to learn as much as possible about the issue and to do something about it. Greta, she's just a child, and she reads the IPCC reports, and there's a lot on her shoulders. And I think, if we all bear this responsibility and face the reality, face the truth, as difficult as it is, it's much worse if we don't. And every year it's going to get worse. So the sooner we act, the easier it is to actually, try to nip the problem in the bud. But it's a long haul. But in the short term, to prevent the crisis from becoming catastrophic, we need to phase out animal agriculture and fossil fuels as quickly as possible, according to IPCC scientists. And I think people, I think about it every day now. That's all I think about is the climate crisis. But it's so good to be working on a solution. I mean, that's the antidote to all the anxiety we're experiencing. But we shouldn't put that on the shoulders of children. You know, as adults, like all of us should be looking at this. This is difficult work. We need to do it. But the good news is that there are incredible solutions, wonderful solutions. So, you know, that's why, you know, I've been working on vigils for 10 years. Now this is my main focus, and there's a reason for that. And that's because we face a existential threat, and that means all life on the planet faces existential threat. And so we have this incredible responsibility. Yeah, I just hope all your viewers, you know, take it upon themselves to learn about the climate crisis, endorse the plant-based treaty, support the politicians that are, you know, are acting like leaders on this issue, and become an activist in this area. Join the climate justice movement, carry plant-based treaty banners, pressure your city to endorse it. We need, you know, we have 5 years at best, according to the IPCC 6th assessment report. And I just, in case your viewers don't know what the IPCC is, it's the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and it was set up after 1992 with the Global Climate Convention. What they do is they assess all the peer-reviewed journal articles on the topic, and it's global, and it's also approved by government, so there's an official stamp to it. If anything, it's been conservative, but now they're becoming more realistic. So, you know, a very critical scientist like Dr. Salesh Rao, who's you know, he said, finally, he gets it. Finally, the Guardian gets it, because the Guardian had published an article saying that there's a methane emergency, and we need to address this. So I just wanted to point that out, like how serious this is. This isn't just like, oh, this is a fun initiative, the plant-based treaty. It's actually, I just wanted to point out how we have, you know, I think about it every day, and I hope everyone else does. You know, and that's my message to everyone, is just, we need to think about it every day, and, you know, work on, like, learn about the problem and work on solutions.
Absolutely. It's a big reason that you're going to all this effort. It's not just a whim, or, you know, like you say, some cute kind of gimmick or whatever. There's a heck of a lot at stake. What about you, Emma? You know, have you got anything that you would like to add?
I mean, I would just like to thank Anita and her team for all the amazing work that they've done to actually put this together. They've just made it so easy for activists to dive in and get involved. You know, anyone from experienced activists to brand new activists, you know, they can actually find their way onto that website and find the ways that they can actually get involved in this. But, you know, also, I mean, a lot of the world right now is limited on movement, limited on the things that we can do. And, you know, I'm constantly hearing from activists that they're in lockdowns or various other things, and they can't do any form of activism. I was actually in an online conference just recently, and I was talking about the plant-based treaty and saying, well, actually there is, you know, things that people can do with the plant-based treaty online, even in total isolation. And one of the activists actually wrote in the chat and said, yes, I've been emailing businesses and I've got 10 businesses to sign on. So, you know, and it's just amazing. It's like, so people can be doing something. And it's important also, you know, we don't have the luxury of time. We don't have the luxury to say, oh, well, I'm in lockdown, I'll just have to wait until the end of lockdown to start activism. And the plant-based treaty is set up in a way that, you know, sure, it would be wonderful if we could get out there and do protests and do dances and all these other things that are part of the plant-based treaty, but there's so much that we can do even just from home, you know, emailing some of those change makers, asking other people to endorse the plant-based treaty and getting that information out over social media and other means. And so, yeah, thanks again for putting it all together and making sure that, you know, this issue is still front of mind while people are so distracted with other things, because we can't forget about this. It absolutely has to be front of mind.
Well, thank you so much to both of you, especially as the team with the plant-based treaty. It's so fantastic. In case some of our viewers might have missed it along the way, www.plantbasedtreaty.org. Get on there, get an endorse. Also, as I was just saying, you can be out there emailing businesses, cities, your politicians. Let's get out there and let's start making a difference for the climate. I can't thank you enough for being here. If anyone wants to learn as well about Emma or Anita's individual advocacy work, we also have our series Activist, and we have individual episodes on both of them as well. So yes, please get out there, endorse this treaty. And this has been Vegan FTA, vegan for the animals.